Okay, and then Chris, are you sharing anything or are you just talking?
Yeah, just talking.
Okay.
I apologize to everyone, Josh, especially to you. This will be my first time teaching this or teaching, sharing this uh first contact. How do you want to be seen? So I'm an advisor for Ellie and I teach one course, Design-Centric Client Relationship course. So uh this is new for Ellie, so somebody had to be first, and I guess Mark pushed me to be the tip of the spear. So I hope to, just like with my class, as I think, Mark, that this particular online version, I you might ask me to do again live, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'd be grateful for that because I would like to have a PowerPoint maybe to share. Um, but for today, we're just going to run through. I'm going to run through the class with no PowerPoint. But hey, Josh, real quick, and then for everyone out there who may listen to this, it's not. Uh, I'm just curious, how long have you worked for Jerry for how long?
I actually just worked for him for 2 years, and then I've been in business for myself I'm going into my 13th season.
Lighting only,
Yes,
and what city are you in? City,
Omaha,
state? Oh,
Omaha,
you're in the
Nebraska.
same town as Jerry.
Yeah,
Great. Okay.
yeah,
So
and I think you met my other designer, Matthew Bay, and we've talked on LinkedIn about
we
that.
have about the maybe the class, the Ellie class.
Yeah, he
Well,
went
I'm
to
really
Italy last spring. Yeah,
yes, and I probably saw him there. Well, I'm glad that
yeah.
I'm glad to get to see you in person, and I'm glad you're a member
Thank you,
of Ellie. Uh,
thank you.
so, first contact. How do you want to be seen as a part, a small part of my DCCR class? And Mark thought it would be a good one to break off individually. And when Mark first presented me with the idea, and some of you here may be thinking the same thing. Well, first contact, how do you want to be seen? How's this guy going to talk about this for 30 minutes? Because, you know, people typically think about when they pull up and walk up to the front door. But for Josh and others of you who are going to listen to this who have years of experience, I'm sure you have systems in place. I am not here to tell you that I think I have the way. I have a way, and the way that I will be explaining these processes that I try to implement. Emphasis on try. I sometimes fail and forget. Uh, it's because of lived experiences. So when I first got together with Mark about Ellie, I was excited about Ellie because none of us are perfect. None of us are going to live forever, but we do have good information that may help those that have been in business for years. They may get a piece of information that they can add to their tool belt. But there's so many people out there who are getting into lighting every day, and they can either flail, they can maybe get incorrect information, or they can go with Ellie and hopefully get a more thoughtful process to building their business in all ways, including design. And what I like about Ellie is that it's design centric, which is as a design slash salesman, that is my focus is to be design centric. So first contact, how do you want to be seen? I'd like to take you all through the process of how you're seen. And if you all here live have any input, don't hesitate to chime in because I want everyone that's a member of Ellie to learn. And as I said earlier, do not know everything through my experiences. So if anyone has a thought, feel free to add. Uh, but in my opinion, the first way people see you is going to be your website or perhaps your vehicle as you're driving around town. And then maybe, I put as a caveat, shows are a possibility, but I think the main way people see you at first are going to be through your website or your vehicles. Um, and different people are going to be in different stages of their business, but in our business, typically the next contact we may have with a client is they're going to call your office. And if you have a person that answers the phone, then when I say how people see you, if they can't see you, they are going to develop a vision of you by what they hear. So in our business, whoever answers the phone in the office has instructions to be vague in a sense. They're not there. Well, let me say this. Their purpose is to get that potential client's that prospect's name, their phone number, email address, and a good time. Tell them the designer's name, and tell them that the designer will be reaching out to them. Now, if you're in business for yourself and you're wearing all those hats, I might advise you, if your phone rings, even if it's your cell phone, if that is the number on the side of your vehicle, I make it a habit. If a person calls and I don't know the number, I don't pick it up. Because if you are in business for yourself, if you are the person that answers the phone, if you are the designer, if you are the salesman, if you are participating in installation, in the reveal, if you do one, in the service, if you're wearing part or all of those hats, the inclination is to pick up the phone. The person engages you. You are naturally going to present yourself as the person that wears that hat, and you're going to get into a conversation with them over the phone that might be better had in person. What do I mean by over the phone or in person? At our company, we do not qualify people over the phone. Some do. We don't. I'm going to tell you why. If you qualify over the phone, I've heard many companies over the years that do. Their purpose for doing it is that they don't want to waste their time to go out and meet that person face to face. They would rather put on their website, we do job. Here's a $4,000 job. Here's an $8,000 job. Here's a $14,000 job. They're doing that to qualify because they don't even want to be bothered with a phone call from someone. Or if they call, they're doing it verbally over the phone where they're trying to qualify them so they don't have to go out there. The company I work for, we actually look at it in a different way. We don't qualify. The person in the office, the less they know, the better, because the more knowledge they have, the more potential for them to get sucked into a back and forth with this potential client or prospect. When I talk to them over the phone, which I'll review a little bit about that in a second, I give very little information because it is the owner's position at the company I work for that the best opportunity you have to potentially get work from that stranger is to be in front of them face to face. So the office will take their information. So let's go to, or if you're in business for yourself and you're the person that would take that message, when you call them back, whether you're the designer or the owner, in this case, I'm going to be approaching it from my perspective as the designer. How do you want that client to see you? Again, knowing that they can only hear you. Well, it's my experience that your words have a heightened meaning. Your pace has a heightened meaning. Your state of mind has a heightened meaning. You want them to know that, of course, you're a nice person, right? So you don't want to be like a robot on the phone, but you want to come across confident. And you will be more confident if you have a system in place of a process that you want to accomplish on the phone, which I'll explain in a minute. I want to say this: you need to clear your mind. You do not want to have a conversation with somebody if you just got off the phone and you were arguing with somebody. You do not want to have a conversation with somebody if your son just scored a goal at the soccer game. You need to be in control, and your words have meaning, your pace is going to have meaning, but all those things lead to the person on the other end of the phone hearing a very confident person that's in charge. Now, part of how you project confidence is explaining to them what to expect in the time frame. I don't know if any of you guys have had this happen, but a couple of years ago, I had a solar guy show up at my house, wanted to put solar panels on the roof, and I've been getting advertisements online. I just said, what the heck? So this girl showed up. She called and said when she'd be there, and that's all she said. I had no expectation on how long she was going to be there, and I didn't even know what to expect. Well, she was here for 3 hours. And when I found out, first of all, it was a game up front to find out how much this was going to cost. I asked her a few times throughout the first hour, and she resisted telling me because she wanted to spend more time discussing features and benefits. And she really spent a lot of time about how much of a huge check I was going to get back from the government once I paid her. So it came up to like over $80,000. And once I woke back up after falling on the floor, I said, wow, this is not what I want to do. And she told me, it's 80 grand up front, but you're going to get 20 some $1,000s back. So don't really worry about it. It's really going to be 50 some thousand. And you spread this out over 30 years, interest free, all that stuff. And when I told her no about the fifth time, she got her manager on the phone. And when I told him no, he got his manager on the phone. And 3 hours later, I finally got her out the door. And then I was peppered for weeks with emails and texts because I had given her that information about wanting to revisit. So I find it very helpful on that first contact to say, listen, this is Chris. I'm the designer. Helena said you called and you wanted some lighting for the front of your home. We talk about, they'll confirm that. I do not get into, is there anything else you want for around your property? I do not do any of that. If I'm on my game, I might have Zillowed or their home to kind of see where they're at, or Googled. But I don't even need to do that to set up that first appointment. But I will tell them what the process looks like. And that process for me is pretty simple. I tell them that we're going to get together. Appointment takes about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how many questions you have. Once we get each other's questions answered, I'm going to excuse myself. I apologize. Typically we put things into zones. You said you want the front of your home lit. That could be your zone A. We'll figure that out. There could be other zones. Now is your time to dream, because the consultation is no cost to you. But once we figure out the zones, I will excuse myself, go out based on our conversation, figure out a design and a ballpark figure for those zones, figure out the design fee for each zone. I'll come back in. We'll go over that. If we're not in the same ballpark, you can kick me to the curb. If we're in the same ballpark, you'll write a check for the design fee, and I'll proceed with my drawing and my design and my proposal. And sometimes I just pause. Sometimes I'll say, sound fair? And usually I get a chuckle from the kick me to the curb. If they're out in the country, I'll say, kick me to the ditch. But the bottom line is I keep it tight, and I want them to see me as confident, clear of mind. Those are the two biggest things, and concise. I don't need to talk about, time frame. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time kind of stuff. How you speak is important, I believe. So once so now we move forward to you then are going to drive to their home. How do you want to be seen? You're going to pull up in a vehicle, and you're going to dress how you're going to dress. And the owner of our company, who's my father, who's actually on the call, Gary Mitchell, he had told me something that always stuck with me. This was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before everyone got cameras at their front doors and all around their house. He said, you need to be, when you're around a client's house, you need to act as if they're looking at you through their window. And that was, when you're pulling up to their house, when you're walking up to their house, when you're installing their job, when you're servicing. And so to modernize that, people literally are looking at you because they have cameras everywhere. But what you pull up in and how you present yourself, I'm sure some of you have it's happened to me, not frequently, but enough where I will not be quite to the door and they've already opened the door and they're coming out. So they've obviously were looking at me. So how you want, I'm not telling you how to pull up and how you should, what you should drive or what you, how your vehicle should look, how you should dress. I'm just telling you people, how do you want to be seen? And there's a variety of ways to be seen. You can pull up in your work truck and your khaki pants and a labeled shirt and a cap. And I did that for years. And I found that people, even if it's $100,000 truck, people see you as a tradesman. And I was just talking to somebody online last night or texting back and forth online that I feel like we, as lighting designers, we, especially those out there who are just working, you know, the $5, $10, $20,000 job, we're walking that razor thin line of trying to be perceived as a designer, but then we're also trying to make a living for ourselves and our family. And it's tough sometimes because a designer presents themselves a different way. If you think of an interior designer or a landscape architect, they typically don't pull up in a work truck with a cap on and a labeled shirt. They typically pull up in a minivan or a sedan and they're in khakis, a collared shirt unmarked and no cap. So I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I'm just letting you know how you're giving you other thoughts to be seen. I know George Winterling's on here, and I bet that he does not pull up in a big 4x4, $150,000 truck with jeans and boots and a work shirt with his name on it and a ball cap. Now, maybe you have a hat on because you got to keep the sun off your head, right? Okay. So, yep. Were you going to comment, George?
Oh, gotta turn the microphone on first.
You got to turn your mic on.
Okay,
There you
sometimes I do wear a hat, you can see.
Say again, please.
I say sometimes I do wear a hat. I'm
Yes.
lack of a little bit of hair.
Yes. So I just want you all to think about that and decide how you want to be seen. I think of you know, I've seen a lot of, you all probably have them around your town. You know, you've got your air conditioner guy, your electrician, your plumber, and they all pull up in trucks. And sometimes some of them are dressed very, you know, decent. But it kind of takes you off that razor's edge into possibly being seen by your client as a tradesman, a contractor. When you're trying to come in there and you have the right to, as a lighting designer, to charge a very fair price for that. Well, how they see you is what bucket they're going to put you in. So it's something you need to think about. Now, as far as your vehicle goes, I've got an interesting story. And I think it was 2005 when we started our business, in 98, we had a green Dodge Dakota with not anything on it and a black little single axle trailer with our company name and professional landscape lighting written across it and our telephone number. And I can't tell you how many times I would pull into a gas station or a grocery store. Oh, let me back up. So in 98, when we started, there was no one doing lighting in our community, in our region. A couple of jobs may have been done by landscapers, but pretty much it was just electricians and line voltage, you know, metal halide, big box lights, only on the wealthiest of homes. So when we started, I would say we had zero competition. But yet when I would pull up to a grocery store or a gas station, it was not uncommon for someone to say, can you DJ our wedding? And it became a joke because that one is the one I remember because it happened frequently. It happened enough that I remember that. And I was baffled at first. I stopped being baffled because I'm like, can't you read? It says professional landscape lighting. I even think we had a couple of little fixtures. No, that was our business card. So as we progressed in 2005, 4 or 5, a friend of mine was wrapping helmets and putting numbers on dirt bikes and drag race cars. That's kind of real popular in my part of the country. And there was a team called Bruco Bruco's a company in Central City, Kentucky, and they owned a couple of, I don't know if anyone's familiar with NASCAR, but they owned 2 or 3 truck teams and 2 or 3 Busch teams. And they used to have to primer all their cars and then paint the car and then stick all the decals on. And around 2004, 2005, in order to generate more money, if Budweiser was your primary sponsor, so they would paint a bunch of cars red. Well, they started having, like, let's say DeWalt was a secondary sponsor. Well, for one particular race, DeWalt took over the primary sponsorship. So now they had to paint all their cars yellow. And evidently painting, you have 15 cars primered, but the paint was a day's process for it to dry. And then they had to put it on and then decal it. And then you had to do 2 of those for your backup car. So he was at the forefront because he was doing some minimal wrapping. He was at the forefront where him and his team would drive about the 45 minutes to Bruco's shop. And I think it was literally him and 2 other guys. They could wrap the whole car, primered car, in 3 hours. Now, it took him some time to print it all off. But from the team's perspective, all they saw was a savings in time. And as you know, with them, time with most of us, time is money, but particularly with them, to be able to have a turnaround was great. So I had known him, and I said, well, I had gotten this truck, and I'm like, hey, why don't we wrap the truck like you're doing those? And I don't think I'd seen it done. And I had a black truck, so he didn't know what he could do. It was a Dodge truck. If you guys know what an 03 Dodge truck looks, you know how the hood was kind of curved, it a little funky. That was kind of new back then. And so he wrapped that truck, and he even wrapped things that were plastic. He said, I don't know if it's going to stick, but I said, let's just do it. If it doesn't work, we'll do it again or peel it off, and just don't do it. So we wrapped the truck, and it was quite a show in our town, because especially with the little kids, they saw us as exciting. Clients saw huge pictures. Not back in that day, the internet. I mean, we had some pictures we had a web presence, but you know, the internet was what it was back in 2004, 2005. At least in our part of the country, people were still, I think the Yellow Pages was still delivered. So to see a truck fully wrapped with nighttime pictures, I remember I'd get people at the stoplight that would roll their window down and go, man, that's cool. And I'll tell you what, I'll fast forward to today. It's not a year goes by that I don't meet, that I'll get a call, and I make a call and meet the client. I don't know the name. They're in a small, newly built 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot home. I'm thinking, well, this probably ain't going to be my client. I go out and meet him, only to find out the daughter, we did her parents' house when she was 12, and she remembers our trucks plus other things. She's lived with our lighting, but the kids remembered our trucks, and it was, and the adults remembered our trucks, and it was branding. And that was a good branding. Even though we had NiteLiters in purple right over the pictures. I mean, when you looked at the truck, it was just a mess. The pictures were cool, but where our name was, it was hard to make it out. It wasn't in your face, but it didn't matter back then because people saw us through those pictures. Then moved to, I want to say it was maybe 2016. I remember getting a phone call and making the appointment, but on the phone call, somebody that the potential client or prospect said, well, we saw your truck and we thought we'd give you a call. And I got out to that area and realized not only have we not done a job out there, so they couldn't have seen our truck, but they couldn't have even seen our service truck because we've done no job near their neighborhood even. So what had happened is in 2012, a guy had moved from Texas up here, lighting only business. And then around that time, 2014, a guy that worked for us left us, opened his own business, lighting only. And they both wrapped their trucks, and they did the same thing we did. Lots of pictures, their name over the pictures. So what I realized is they were seeing that other person's truck, and then they go online to find, and then we popped up maybe at the top. And so they were calling us thinking we were we weren't them, but they thought they were us. So what I started to think about was, wow, I thought it was great at first, but then until I thought, well, how many times is that happening where they perhaps might be calling them thinking they were our truck, right? So I didn't know, but at the time, our company, I guess, started rebranding. I didn't tell them to rebrand, but all they've done is they started taking away pictures on certain vehicles and making it more about our logo, because our graphic designer had come up with a great, what I think is a great logo for our company. That's just an N and an L for NiteLiters. And then we started trying to create a more sophisticated brand, like instead of what I call a circus of pictures, it became more of, Dad, what does it say on the side of your truck? What's the verbiage?
Your outdoor landscape designer.
Right.
Something, what you're talking
Design
about.
firm, design firm. So
Farm, yeah.
a little bit more sophisticated. And more recently, I don't know how many of you know Mike Long, but I am friends with him. He's from up north, and he went through a rebranding where it was just long landscape and lighting or something. It was pretty bland, and he had used to do landscaping, and he really wanted to step away from that and have people see him differently. So, but he has competition. So what he did is he went to a professional, and he has a whole new name, and he has like a cartoon figure, which I think is very interesting. There's a company here in Owensboro, Kentucky, Purple Walrus, and he has a purple walrus on his truck. And I actually met with him and talked to him about that. And he said, yeah, a lot of people, it sticks in their brain because they see that purple walrus. So, that could be a good idea. My belief is that if you are new, or forgive me, if there's no competition around you, you could really go with the circus. If you have competition and you see vehicles around with pictures splattered on their trucks or vans with lighting jobs, maybe you go more the Mike Long way. But again, it's just about how you want to be seen. And I would think in that instance, as we try to do, I think we all try to do that, bother to put our name and or anything on our vehicles, is we want to be seen. You want to be separated from the others. So when you're walking up to the door, you're face to face. There is, I think there's subjective thing. Well, let me back it. You don't want to talk fast. You don't want to present. In my opinion, you do not want to talk fast when you're meeting them at the door. And I know here at our company, I bet Josh, you do this, being under the tutelage of McKay, it's my opinion that if you want to be thought of as a designer, you need to stay away from being a fixture salesman. You need to stay away from greeting them at the door with an iPad in your hand and a fistful of flags, ready to walk and talk design, I call it. Let's walk around here, and if you draw them out, you need to get inside their house. A designer, an interior design, well, a landscape architect that is going to be designing the exterior of their home, at least two that I know, never just meet them at the door and start walking around the house. They go in and sit down, and there is some purpose for doing that. But the main purpose is you want to have that time with them so they can see you as a designer. A contractor will show up with flags and his iPad to show them pictures and start jabbing them in the ground. Sometimes when they show up, there's already flags in the ground because the person's getting multiple bids. All the more reason for you to separate yourself as to how you're seen. So I'll wrap this up or repeat again. When you're on the phone call, how you speak exudes confidence and control. Somebody is going to be in control during the phone call, and the more concise you are and the more you tell them what to expect and the time frame keeps you in control. When you walk up to the door to them to meet them, if you let them push you backwards out into the yard, you are losing control right there. you need to stop and hold your ground and say, can we come inside? The only time I didn't do that was during COVID. And even then I said, can we go to your garage? Because most people around here were at least comfortable with that. So you need to exercise that control. From that moment you call them, someone's in control. And if you exude confidence and control in that phone call and keep it tight, then it will be easier for you to continue that confidence and control when you meet them in person. No matter what you're wearing, no matter what your vehicle looks like. If you stand at the door and insert yourself into their home, so to speak, and then you'll go on with your consultation. So Mark, I think that's all I had.
Okay, awesome. Well, I got a question for you in terms of, or maybe the whole group here, anybody that wants to chime in, is more towards what suggestions do you have towards making an impression to as you compare yourself to your competition in your area? What would you suggest? How can you stand apart from the rest?
Chris Carey, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, at one point I had a Mazda Miata, and I used to drive that to appointments, and that would always, initially, if there was a husband wife, it would open up some kind of conversation with the husband that had nothing to do with landscape lighting or the landscape or anything. And I always wore nice jeans, clean jeans, and or khakis, and a collared polo shirt that had a logo on it. Or I would wear just a regular collared shirt. But I tried to make it casual, not like it's an appointment with someone who's like the president of a company or something like that. And I always tried to find out, where they found the information from, how they contacted me. Was it a garden club? Was it an event that I was at? Was it the landscaper recommended me? Because if somebody recommends you, you should be able to go back to that person and say, hey, really appreciate you turning the Joneses on to me. Looks like we're going to do a nice job there. And it's a way to say, do you have anybody else that you can turn me on to see if there's something there? I don't know. That's the way I always looked at it. And at the office, they would answer the phone and they would find out geographically where they were in the Chicagoland area. And then some people in the company worked certain areas. The North Shore was considered one part. The city is another part. The western suburbs would be another part. And then southwestern suburbs or south suburbs would be a third part. And depending upon where it was, depended upon who it would go to. Because there were multiple, and who brought the business to the door to begin with. Was it a landscaper that I knew that referred it, and then it should come to me. It doesn't matter geographically where it came from or where it is. But if it was a cold call, and they didn't know anybody, or it wasn't a referral from somebody else, then it would go geographically to wherever it was. And then I would always call them back. And I think, like Chris was saying, you need to have time where it's just office time, where you're just sitting in your office and you're no interruptions. And you can ask a couple of 2, 3, 4, 5 questions before you set up some kind of an appointment to go and see them. That's the way it always worked for me. Always seemed to work well. And I don't know if you have a design fee or not, Josh. Some people do, some people don't. I think by charging a design fee, you separate yourself out from the competition. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It could be $300, $250, whatever you think your time is worth for the hour to 2 hours that you're going to spend with this person, talking about their landscape and their lighting and what they're looking to do. Yeah. And some people don't do it.
Mark, do you mind if I share a story about
Yeah.
how I'm seeing
Sure.
how I accidentally happened upon it. So in 2016, end of 2016, I did not leave NiteLiters, but I took a job in St. Louis, which is about 4 hours from where I live. My mom lives there. I drove there Sunday evening and would drive home Thursday evening. And I had a truck for many years, but when I took that out Thursday evening on the way back, I would oftentimes go to consultations or proposals or do designs in town. There's a town, Evansville, Indiana, that's on my way back. I'd do it there, Owensboro, and then I'd work with NiteLiters Saturday or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then sometimes Sunday afternoon I'd do the same thing. I'd stop in Evansville for a consultation, proposal, etc. on my way back to St. Louis. So what happened though when I took that job full time is I got rid of the truck. It wasn't my choice because I didn't own it; it belonged to NiteLiters. So I had to get a vehicle. So I thought I'd get a vehicle that was a little more gas efficient. And then also I hadn't had a car in a while and I didn't have so I got a little zippy car and it was a Cadillac, which isn't as nice as it used to be because under the hood is a GM after all. But I was driving that car to and from the medical job that I took in St. Louis. So I had to wear a suit at first when I was working in St. Louis. So on Thursday afternoon, I'd take my tie off. And if I had a consultation in Evansville on my way home, I'd stop in there and I'd have my coat and my collared shirt, my slacks and my dress shoes on, and I pull up in a Cadillac unmarked. And right off the bat, the very first time that happened, I could just feel the confusion on that client's face. Felt it like, oh my gosh, I just felt it run over me. But they weren't upset with me. They were just confused, which after it happened, I kind of started to enjoy it because two things happened. I could feel them seeing me differently. I felt it. And then the first comment I would go in. Of course, they're going to invite me in. I'm in my dress shoes. I'm not walking around this yard yet. They would invite me in.
No boots?
Yeah, 2 or 3 sentences in, the most would get around to what are you? You wear a coat, drive a car, Cadillac. And it became an opportunity to bond and rapport because I would tell them that I was working at a diabetes infusion clinic on the administration side. And that opened up a whole conversation because everybody knows somebody who has diabetes. So it was just 5-10 minutes, depending on how close the person with diabetes, how close they were to a person they knew. Sometimes they had diabetes and we talked for longer. So fast forward about 8 months, the diabetes infusion clinic if you all are familiar with kidney dialysis, it's you walk into an open room, people sit in chairs for hours. They become kind of a community. They come in to get their diabetes infusion every week or every 3 weeks, and they kind of develop a little community. And it's a big open room. The head nurse had her office. The counter where they check in is open. So everyone's just kind of together. And I found that I would come into the office as the months passed, as you would get this treatment, you wouldn't have to come back as frequently. And then of course, new people are coming in all the time. So after I would walk in there in my coat and tie, having come from a meeting or whatever, not every day, just every now and again, because they did not need me in there. They didn't need my presence in there every day. And eventually the nurse practitioner walked up to me one time and said, "Chris, do you think you could get some scrubs and wear them when you come in here? Because you're making the patients uncomfortable." So I did that. So now on a Thursday afternoon, I'm leaving their clinic, or now I'm wearing scrubs all the time because it ended up benefiting me when I'm meeting with doctors, going to hospitals. I look like one of them. I mean, it was an accidental awesome thing because when you roll into a hospital to talk to a doctor or even to cold call and you're in a suit and tie, you look like any other pharmaceutical rep. Now I'm rolling in there in scrubs. They may not be the right color scrubs, but I look like I'm part of the wherever I'm at. So it worked for me on that level too. But now I'm driving home, I'm stopping in Evansville or Owensboro, and I'm getting out of a
You're wearing
Cadillac
scrubs.
in scrubs, walking up to the door to talk
Now
about
you're
lighting.
really confusing the client.
Yes. And it was such an eye-opening moment to me about how I was seen. And if people can peg you and if you walk up, you show up in a truck, you get out in, I'm not talking anything, let's say everything's cleaned up to the nines, brand new boots, jeans, your logo or your company name and your cap on, and you look clean, brand new out of the dryer, truck just clean, you still look how you look to that person. They can peg you, or they're trying to put you in a bucket. And when I rolled up in a car in scrubs, they could not put me in a bucket. And so if they're confused, if they're putting you in a bucket, they're already making a judgment of you. If they can't, I felt it with them not being able to put me in a bucket, I had more control. So that's what I wanted to say, Mark.
Nice. George, can you share some of your thoughts? Because you're dealing with quite a different clientele crowd, and that maybe give us some of your perspective on this.
I usually take my cues from the group I'm meeting with. A lot of times I'm meeting with the landscape architect, interior designer as a group, and I'm just part of the presentation, and I'll try to match myself with what they're wearing. Typically, in that situation, I would wear a jacket, no tie. The ties are out anymore. Probably a polo shirt, but looking professional. If I go to the house, I'm going to go in a car and I'm going to meet with them, and I want to find out what they're looking for. How did they come to decide they want landscape lighting? What is the purpose? Are there any security issues? Are there any step issues? Is anyone afraid of tripping and falling? Are there any areas around the house that need special attention? Do they have features? Just get them to talk about what they want. And that's how I
George.
kind of make friends.
Hey, George.
Yes, sir.
How long have you been doing landscape lighting design?
78.
And how old were you then?
Oh, 25, 26.
Great. So I have a question for you that I think anyone who listens to this later, and Josh, who's on here right now, did you find as you got older, people saw you differently? Did you feel like they saw you as more of the
Oh, yeah.
wise person in the room, or
Oh,
did they
absolutely.
always? Yeah. So Josh, 20 years, you'll get there.
No, I mean,
I was
The
just
beard will be
curious.
white like mine. And
but
then,
you
and then
see,
you're
I used
all
to
set.
go in a suit and tie.
When you were
and
25?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Nice.
that was
I-
1980, George, right?
Absolutely. Up until I would say probably mid 90s. And if I had to go to New York for a meeting, or if I was working in Rome, or another country, definitely I was wearing a sport coat with a jacket and tie. I will still do that today, depending on the meeting. So it depends who you're talking to. You meet your crowd.
So George, when you were in your 20s, and you were doing a local meeting a client in your
Absolutely.
town, you
Absolutely.
showed up in a suit and tie, a coat and tie.
Absolutely.
Why did you do that?
Well, I wasn't an electrician. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I wasn't a tradesman. I was a designer. And I was coming to offer a solution to their problems and understand what they were looking for. And I was going to do something a little bit, very unique. I was going to paint a picture with light. I wasn't going to sell them fixtures. And I didn't do a design that day. I came back after I found out what they wanted, and I would do a design from that. And, you come in, you're offering them something that they don't have, that they've not seen. Because the typical landscape lighting contractor will come in, like you say, with flags, do the thing, and walk out. I just had that happen in Fort Lauderdale. And I couldn't compete. It wasn't something that the client even wanted. They just wanted someone to come in and put in typical landscape lighting. And the project was going to be over $100,000. But it was not
Or-
something.
Would it have been over $100,000? You mean for the company even that came in with flags? It was just that
Yes.
kind of project.
It was that kind
And-
of project.
Okay.
But that's what they expected. And
So when you were in your 20s, you said you weren't an electrician, you weren't a tradesman. Why did you go the route of dressing like coat and slacks
you're
versus
setting
why
yourself
did,
apart. You're setting
Yeah.
yourself apart as a
well
professional.
why didn't you decided you didn't want to come in to look like a tradesman. You wanted to go the total opposite direction and look like a designer, a professional.
Exactly. And when I'm on the job, that's the difference. But I'm still going to look a little bit better,
Right.
That's good. I'm
But
glad.
that
to
was
see you
also,
different
that was
take.
kind of also the day that you're talking, 1980s, 1990s, that's to separate yourself away from being a tradesman and an electrician or to be in with landscape architects or interior designers, you had to dress just a little bit nicer. Sport coat, slacks, polo
you
shirt,
had to
or
wear what they were
button-down
wearing.
shirt. That was the look.
You had to be one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
have to
but
do that
today-
today too.
Yeah, I agree with George. I still think about that today. Chris, are you saying that the landscape architect, the interior designer show up like in jeans and a cap and a logoed shirt? Or
No,
what's
no,
changed?
no. I think that in the 1980s and the 1990s, yes, that's the way it was. But nowadays, I don't know that you would. It would depend on the job. But if it was a high profile client, then yeah, I'd probably wear a sport coat and slacks, khakis.
Yeah,
or
if you're meeting in
slacks.
an office situation or something like that, if you're meeting
Yeah,
at the home,
that's different.
you're going to try to wear what the client's wearing. You're going to try to wear.
Yeah.
You're going to
Mimic,
not make anybody uncomfortable.
Right. Depends on the project, I think, project by project space. But, if here in Chicagoland, I know the neighborhoods that are the wealthy neighborhoods, so the neighborhoods
Mhm.
and there are neighborhoods that are solar lighting only, and
Mhm.
you don't really want to be in those neighborhoods either. But the right neighborhood, then you know what the clients are going to be like, pretty much. You should.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Now I
The whole
might
thing is just don't make anyone uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I might say that region to region, our experiences are going to be different. But as we came up in our business in our small town, of course, we branched out to other small towns. We have a lot of 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. We do have many 4-bedroom, 3-bath, 3-car side loads, but those far, far outweigh the 10,000, 20,000 square foot homes. And because of where we're at, they're nowhere near the expense of probably where Chris and George are at, probably Josh either. Mike for that matter, and Mark, yeah, all of you. You get a lot more home here for the dollar. But what I found myself doing as we've grown our business is we squeeze everything like a juice from a beet. We're trying to squeeze every little bit. It's like I am not overwhelmed with work. So I've had to try to be different and continue to try to be different. And Chris, I guess I'm just going to call it, because of maybe the region I'm in, is I try to give that person who lives in a smaller home, we have more of them, and those people could be doing well. But because of our region, maybe I try to give every person that I want them to see me as a professional, because I think they deserve professionalism, right? I want to, because what's coming in behind me is a landscaper wanting to do lights, and I may not get the job, as George mentioned with Fort Lauderdale, but they will remember me as being different. And what I have found over the years is sometimes what happens is they'll go with a less expensive person, and then 3 or 4 years later, after
They'll call
their
you.
well, after their ego dies down and they're not getting it serviced, and they realize that they probably should have gone with us anyway for various reasons, they call us, like you said, Chris.
Right.
But what I also believe, and I don't have any lived experience to back this up, but like the people that George met with, I've met with people like that just weren't a fit for us. But it doesn't mean that they won't be at a party and tell a friend or an aunt who they think, oh, you need this guy because of what the impact you made on them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
He may not have gotten the job, but he got an impression across that they're going to remember and pass on to other people.
Yeah.
Or
hopefully-
call you back in 4 years.
Well,
Correct.
hopefully they learned something that I was doing, and there'll be a fit at another point.
Yeah.
Because I was meeting with a landscape architect and a general contractor.
Good. Hey, Josh, we only have about like 8 minutes left here, guys. Do you have any specific questions that you'd just like to ask, being that this is kind of a Q&A part here, that you're fortunate to be here? So, if you have questions that you'd like to ask just just go for it. And,
No, not really. I mean, I appreciate you guys all coming together and kind of talk about this. This is actually a topic that I discussed with my team, with Matthew, my other designer, and my ops manager, who, started out as the lowest rung laborer, right? And he worked his way up. And to him, if he's working in the field at all, he feels like, he's still a laborer, so he wants to dress like that. And so we've had many discussions about when he shows up to the job site, he needs to look a little bit different for the customer, because sometimes the customer wants to talk to somebody in charge. And so just the simple idea that he's not wearing ripped jeans, dirty jeans, and he's wearing a polo, which our laborers wear t-shirts, sets him apart. And he's been pleasantly surprised at how customers immediately come to him with their questions and things. If they're not calling me or texting me, right, they feel comfortable going up to him and trusting that he knows what's going on just from his dress. So
How they see him.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He's not
Which box does he go in?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
huge.
I guess my big question is the design fee, where you present that, and then because we are really, I mean, if you know Jerry McKay at all, I would say, without sounding cocky, we're really the only 2 players in our market, other than, there's some other companies that say they only do lighting, and there's that big franchise that's come to town. But really, in terms of lighting designers, we're it. But as far as I understand, neither of us are charging design fees. And we're both still going up against Joe's Mowing, for that lighting work, because every distributor in town is selling fixtures, right? And so I understand the sales process is different. We immediately try to differentiate ourselves, but how do we, how did you see, I guess, when you first started out, charging that design fee? How did you get into that?
I lost.
Well, Mark, can you hear me?
yeah,
So I'm sure that could be a whole separate free class for all the members, right?
sure.
I can share my story with you, Josh, if I have time, Mark. Just why I charge a design fee.
5 or 8 minutes, hopefully.
So in 2006, I'm a member of AOLP, was back then. Father's a charter member. I was at the conference, and as I started, Dad and I were in our own little bubble. We were 100% nightscaping. We were properly shielded from the world and thought we were the best at what we did. I went to AOLP and realized, wow, there's lots of product, lots of people, great people. I knew about Mike Gambino because he was a nightscaping guy. And I got on his website and found out he charged a $75 consultation fee just to meet him. So I had talks back and forth with my dad about that, and there was concern that we might drive our business right off a cliff if we asked for a consultation fee. But I call my dad old low and slow, and I'm the bull in the china shop. And usually when we butt heads, we come out with a pretty good decision. And we were still in the middle of metaphorically butting heads, and I went ahead and jumped off the reservation. And I was at a garden club presentation at a lady's house doing a slide presentation, and I told the ladies there if they signed up for a consultation fee, I'd give them half off. So I got 2 consultation fees for $38.50. Sold one of the jobs. Woohoo! This is the way to go. So off and running we went. We started charging $75, $100 if they were further out. Note consultation fee. Well, I don't remember who came up with the thought first, whether it was my father or me, but in this part of the country, charging somebody just to meet them sounded a little aloof. How cool am I? You must pay just for my presence. So how many people was I telling there'd be a $75 or $100 consultation fee on the phone and there were several that said, well, we'll get back to you, and probably getting back to us. So it got back to what my dad always talked about, get in front of them. So we knew we did a design. By then, I had been doing designs for nothing. And you know how it is. You pull up to the house, they want lighting for the front of their home. They live on 2 acres. Your lighting passion takes over. The next thing you know, you're designing the whole daggone property. And why wouldn't they want it? You're not charging them for it. I got to where I'd leave the house. I literally remember a time where I was installing. I washed up at the spigot, changed my shirt, went to an appointment at 6 o'clock because I was still installing. Did just that. They wanted lighting for the front of their house. Now I'm doing a lighting design for their whole property. And I walked out of the house saying, they're not going to do this, rah, rah, in my head. And it affected my design. So I just hammered through the design. Path lights here, up lights there, area lights here, 2 lights under this tree. I didn't care. I just wanted to get through it. That's the way I felt. I had to fight it, but I was losing the battle. So all that's happening at that time. So we knew we did a design. We wanted to charge a fee. So we started charging a design fee. And it was a dart at a board. What are you going to charge? Well, I sat there. Here's something that happened. I sat there for an hour, probably 2, with my dad, talking to him about why I thought I'm worth it. We've got wear and tear on our vehicles. We're consuming fuel. And then I'm like, hey, and he's like, okay, let's do this. And I remember telling him, yeah, let's credit it back to them if they do the work. And he said, no, if you just, one or 2 things are happening. Either you just lied to me, or you're going to put it back in the job and you're lying to your client. If you think you're worth it, son, then it's pay as you go, and they pay it and you don't give it back. And so I was thankful.
Whether they install the job or not.
Correct.
Yes.
But the caveat for me, Josh, and for any of you out there that have other designers that aren't owners, if you're an owner and somebody pays you a $500 design fee and they don't move forward, well, it hurts, but you got $500 in your pocket. As a designer, which I am only, I'm not the owner. If I only get that design fee if I sell part or all of the job, because I think what you don't want your designers to do is become designers only. The company needs to make money. You need to sell jobs. You don't want a bunch of designers out there charging $1,000, $1,500 design fees because all they're trying to do is collect the design fee. You need to sell the work. So it was going through that launched us into charging a design fee. It was part because I was tired of getting kicked in the gut, feeling used and abused. And once I charged that design fee, something happened. I can't remember the exact first time, but I know how I felt. I felt 2 things. It might have been $100 and it might have been a 100 fixture job. But when they paid me that $100 and I walked out of the house, I felt 2 things. I felt a feeling of worth run over me like warm water. I was valued. And I also felt something else, which has probably impacted my design. I don't want to say more than anything because I've been to a lot of different things, but I can tell you it impacted my design. I left that house feeling accountable to them. I better slow down and do a good, thoughtful design because they are paying for it.
I think it also gets you excited about the job Because
Yep.
you start to look at things a little bit differently instead of, an uplight on this tree, uplight here, path light here, deck light there, whatever. You try to think of other ways to light an area or to make the front of this house look better than it
Yep.
does. And I think it makes you look at all of the aspects of the house and or the landscape, and really make you sort of focus on it that way. Because now you're like, okay, now I'm a designer. I'm not an installer. I'm not an owner. I'm just a designer right now, and I'm putting that hat on right now. And that's where I'm going to work from.
Yep. And I'll put a little commercial out to anyone who watches this, is that is one of the anchors of my class. There's a lot more that goes into it than just deciding to charge a design fee. Because when we started doing it, my DCCR class, I go into it in depth and walk you through the steps to get there, step by step. Because for 2008, I went back to the AOLP conference and was singing the praises of the design fee. And everyone was like, I heard two things. Oh yeah, we do that too. Until I grind down on them and find out they didn't do it on every job. And if they did it, they were giving it back to them if they signed up. And then they would never do it with an existing client. When my father told me, and I had that same insecurity, and some clients I do not charge a design fee, and he doesn't care. Nobody cares. It's money out of my pocket that I'm missing out on. But who better to pay you a design fee than the people who respect your work? They should be wanting to pay you the most. Yet I have that weakness about, I don't want to charge them. They're my client. Well, they should be
Because
the
they're
ones
existing.
yes, they should be the ones most wanting to pay you. If you go to add 5 fixtures and you're going to spend an hour, they should pay you $100, $200, and they should be willing to want to pay you. But I get into that in depth into my class, so that's my little commercial for that.
Yeah, I
All right.
appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Well, unless anybody else has any final thoughts, let's go ahead and close out. Any last thoughts, anybody, or are we done? Okay.
No, when we
Yeah.
did it, it was a design build agreement. So it wasn't just a design fee, it was a design, and then we're gonna build what we're gonna design. And that ties them into that contract then of the lighting, whatever that is, the front yard, the backyard, side yard, the driveway, whatever it is. So it was a design build fee. So
There you go.
Good.
I don't know if that separates it out or not.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh, for being here. Thank you, everybody else, for being part of this program and for your feedback, your comments. And we'll see you then next month. We've got these monthly webinars that we'll have. The next one will be in March. That's going to be how to work with specialty disciplines on your team. George will be heading up that class. And then we rotate through this with different instructors for these different sessions. And then we also have our mentor group studies, which is a whole nother series that will be happening every other month. So thank you.
What's the date in March, Mark?
March, I'm going to be posting this. So even though
Okay.
this is just a recording, it'll be March 8th. It's a Friday. We're going to be doing these webinars on the Fridays.
Okay, super.
Okay, guys. Hey, George,
Thanks,
have a
guys.
safe
Thanks
trip.
again.
Travel.
Bye,
Thank
Gary.
you guys all soon.
I'll be back on Sunday. And there's Chris. Say
Oh,
hi.
hey.
All right. Well, have a
Getting
good
ready
time.
for the dinner. Thanks,
All
guys.
right. Thank
right.
you all.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Great
bye,
weekend.
Gary. Bye, Chris. Bye, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mike.
Take care.
We're good.